Rubbin'minds. Many thanks for joining us. My name is Hero Daniels, and we have a great show for you today. It's been a very eventful week, from northern governors and some senators kicking against President Tinubu's tax reforms to the national grid collapsing again for the 10th time this year. That's more times than my past relationships collapsed in my entire adult life. TCN, you need to do better. Also, 7 Nigerian artists were nominated for the Grammys, and Donald Trump won the U.S. elections, which is what we'll be talking about today. The U.S. elections, lessons for Nigeria's electoral process. And with me in the studio to discuss this, I have a public policy enthusiast in the person of Aniken Joseph, and also a social commentator, Ifeanyi Okoye. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice.
Okay, I'm going to start with you, Ifeanyi. What are your thoughts on the just concluded United States presidential elections?
Well, as a citizen of Nigeria, I would say we don't really, I myself, I don't really have much interest. But my own take is for global peace. Somebody who is inclined with global peace that could settle issues as regard what is happening in the Middle East, because presently we have two wars going on, the Ukraine and the Russia, who as a result of NATO differences. Then coming to the Middle East, the Israel, the Gaza, the Hamas, and the Iran. So those are issues that we look at. But presently, I don't really have an issue, because if you look at Trump, his first term from 2016 to 2020, he was never showed any interest in African affairs. That was just the truth. He was so much particular about the American people, even though the Americans see him as somebody, oh, that is a women abuser, he's a misogynist, and oh, he doesn't believe in human equality. So I believe that Americans should take care of their problem. Then African leaders should forge ahead, because Trump will tell you American first. But an average Nigerian is always our dream to aspire to visit the US.
Yes.
But after there, what does he end? Where does he end there? Because we have leaders who need to come back and look home inward and fix our own problem.
True. So what we're also trying to focus on in the course of this conversation is what Nigeria can learn from the electoral process. And we're going to talk about the immigration issues, because I think Trump is very strict on immigration. So for a lot of people that are happy that, oh, Trump won the elections, they also better make sure that they come right if they want to ever visit the United States of America. So I'm going to sample your opinion right now, Aniken. What are your general thoughts on the electoral process? You know, was it free and fair? Do you think there was a bit of external influence from any other country, you know, Russia? Because there's so many interests. You know, American elections, there's a lot of global interest. So do you think it was free and fair? What do you think of the system? What are your thoughts?
Concerning the elections, it was clear that Americans were the biggest influence over the American elections. To suggest that there were external influences that could significantly affect the outcome is something that had been debunked several years ago, from 2016, 2017, 2018, when it was really high on the agenda in the news. In terms of what we can learn, the first thing I would like to point out is that people typically do what they can. And what we see is that the Americans have demonstrated over time that they can conduct elections. And we, on the other side, we have demonstrated that we cannot. So there is a capacity conversation that we must have. There is a gap. We like to think that the people who are responsible for elections here have what it takes to do it. But if we're honest with ourselves, we need to take a look at the results in the last few years. And, you know, if you put 2 and 2 together, you can conclude conveniently that we do not have the capacity, or at least those of us who are managing election around this country at the moment have not demonstrated the capacity to deliver competently on elections that are devoid of really basic scandals. Thank you.
Okay, so now, talking about, I want us to take this step by step. So we're going to start with the electoral method.
Sure.
Comparing the American system, you know, they do the electoral college, and if you have 270 votes, you'll be able to win, you know, as opposed to like the popular vote. So even if you had the popular votes, and I think that happened during Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, where Hillary Clinton had the popular vote, but she failed to win the Electoral College. So is this something you think that we can adopt here? Now, over here, our law says that a candidate must have at least 25%, I believe, in two-thirds of the nation, you know. So what do you think we can sort of adopt, or do you think our system works for us? Will you take that question if I...
Well, I'll disagree with him on one issue, where he said we don't have the capacity to conduct such elections. The people who conducted Americans' election, they are not spirit. Their system are not perfect. But the people, they have a system that is laid down, that everybody who is coming is being checkmated. But here, the people, if you send people in America, you bring them to conduct election here, they'll be overwhelmed. Because the people, especially the state actors and the electorate, they are not even willing to do the right thing. So those are some of the issues.
What do you mean they are not willing to do the right thing? You said the electorates are not willing to do the right thing. Can you throw more light on that?
A politician comes today, he issues money to electorate. It is the onus of the electorate to decide, will they sell their conscience or to vote rightly. That's where I am. Then back to your...
No, there are lots of, before we get to that, there are lots of conversations, especially with the last elections, where a lot of people felt that, you know, the votes were manipulated, it wasn't properly counted. Electorates stood under the sun, under the rain, and they wanted to make sure that, yes, their votes were counted. And, you know, there were several conversations around eventually when the results came out from INEC, what was seen in the polling booths did not reflect what was counted.
That's where the state actors, I say the state actors come to play. Who are your state actors? Your politicians, your security agencies, the electoral umpire. At least they have to hold a form of a little integrity to the people who are governed. Whereby you tell us A, you do B as state actors, then it calls in question. Then we are not ready to evolve because our process of democracy is tailored towards the US.
Anikan, what are your thoughts on this?
I think, although he started by saying he disagrees, he came back to agree with me because
I said they are not spirits. The people who did the US elections.
But
I said if you bring them here, they will be overwhelmed.
That is a point.
We don't have a system.
That is a point of agreement, my brother. The truth is, the system that we have. Remember that our electoral empire are considered independent. Even in their name, they are considered independent, which suggests that they can take specific steps, integrated steps, to achieve specific outcomes that everybody will look at the process and say, it is fair. And that is a competency issue. If you give me 300 billion naira to conduct elections, and I've conducted it, you know, in the next 6 years, we're going to have 30 years of consecutive democracy in this country. So we have enough institutional memory to improve our elections moving forward. But every time we talk about elections, it looks like, you know, we are taking baby steps even after 30 years. So when I say you agree with me, it is consistent with my position that if people had the know-how in terms of character competency, they would at least put a level of resistance to the so-called political players. And that is my opinion.
Okay, so can we now talk about the role that the judiciary plays? Now, the INEC itself is very independent. The three arms of government, executive, judiciary, legislation, is supposed to be independent.
Yes.
There have been conversations around how independent is the judiciary when the president has the power to appoint the Chief Justice of the nation.
Correct.
You know, so in America, judges are appointed for life. You know, what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think we can learn?
Justice is a very sensitive thing, and we must recognize immediately that the people we're talking about are human like us. They are affected by everything that affects us, and they are called to a higher moral compass. The responsibility of a judge is to experience everything that every Nigerian is experiencing, but to deny that experience and execute a higher standard. And when you're calling people to do that, there now has to be scrutiny on people's character and antecedents. Where are they coming from? What history do they come with? What character baggage exists that we can recognize and adjust ourselves for? And if we do not really pay attention to people's history, then we shouldn't be surprised when they do something because we didn't pay enough attention to the consistent position they had taken in the past as far as the law is concerned.
Okay. I'm going to throw this question to you, Ifeanyi. If there's one thing we can all agree on, is the fact that America's election was very successful digitally. Now, do you think it's possible for us to really make sure that our elections are playing on that digital level. You know, we've had the efforts in the last election with the BVAs, but you see that, okay, some polling units, they say the BVA machines are not working, and by the time the results come out, you see different results, 15 kinds of results from Lagos State, you know, another set of results from Ogun State, and it doesn't tally. But the American elections, everything tallied, everything came in together. So how can we sort of consolidate on the first step of even introducing the BVAs and all of the technological advancements and innovation that the INEC has brought? How can we make it efficient? Because from the last election, it doesn't seem it was.
The American system is not 100% perfect. We witnessed where they were burning off ballot, we like say, polling centers in Washington and some other places. And you also saw the issue of maybe some people claim that the systems where they vote, the online voting was being manipulated. But true to its cause, no elections.
What was the source of this information?
No, this information, we are on the new media. Whereby in Washington, some places were burned, and they accused it on Trump supporters, which Biden called them, they are all garbaged. Make your findings. They are there. So American system are not 100% perfect, but and I would like to say also, no elections are 100% perfect, because the only thing you improve as time goes on. But ours, we have refused to improve. We always admire the American the model of democracy.
Yeah, okay, so I think I need to make this very clear. We're not saying that the elections were 100% accurate and efficient, you know, but from what you just described, you know, and all of the cases you mentioned,
see people without voters ID in America coming to vote.
Of course, there is no democracy that doesn't have election issues. But we're trying to compare the American voting system versus the Nigerian voting system. Can we agree that with the facts that is before us, the American voting system seems to be more efficient than the Nigerian voting system?
Of course, it's very efficient.
And all we're doing is we're not trying to compare. We're really trying to see what can we emulate, what are the good things that we can pick up from such a democracy so that we can make ours better.
I think one thing is, first and foremost, the average American is very patriotic, irrespective of the divide they fall. That's why you see them American first, you see the American dreams, and you see them believing in their country before any other thing. The country comes first. And that's that passion that burns American to do the right thing, because they know it is the long term that counts, not the short term. But coming down to Nigeria, we've lost, virtually most people who have lost patriotism in the process, not just the process, but the country. So those are some of the challenging issues.
Anike, what are your thoughts?
I think that when you're trying to solve a problem, the concept of human-centered design has to be considered. Now, we are not America. However, elections are elections, and the principles that guide elections are accountability. So if we say that there are 10 million votes, we should be able to say 3 hours later that there's 40% of votes not counted, isn't it? And that's what gave the American public a level of comfort that this process made sense. In our system, we cannot account for votes, you know, and when we do, they are not consistent with what people thought. For instance, how many people were registered voters, you know, how many votes were voided votes, you know, and then by the time the physical evidence of votes are coming up, you're seeing, you know, mutilated documents here and there. So you can look at the whole value chain for us, and you can see the lack of character, which is what I talked about, capacity, our capacity at the moment. And I use our in quotes because INEC represents us. If INEC can't do it, it means we can't do it. And so we need to take steps to look at this and say, why does it happen? For instance, typically, elections are supposed to start early. The first obstacle to elections are materials arriving on time. There's a whole logistics behind it. Why can't we figure that out? You know, so these are things that we need to look at and say, they are not sophisticated issues, they are really human issues. And it is a human issue because it's just an issue of imagination, bringing thorough thinking to the table and having disciplined execution across board. And if we bring these to the table, we can see these things without any significant improvement in budget.
You know, even in the American elections, there's what we call the early voting.
Correct.
and it's such an efficient system that it still counts,
yes.
and it's not being manipulated, at least to the best of the public's knowledge. You know, is this something you think we can adopt, or do you think that our democracy or our organization as an independent National Electoral Commission, I'm trying to use your word now, do you think we're not yet there? You know, why can't we do early voting?
I have an interesting theory on this. The question is, what are we trying to achieve? Once you define what you're trying to achieve, you will take practical steps to achieve it. So most people complain about integrity of elections. So what is a polling unit? What makes a polling unit conducive for typical or safe elections to occur? We've not been able to define this, because a polling unit in, let's say, Gwagwa in Kaduna is different from a polling unit in Lekki Phase 1. And that level of inconsistency is a recipe for disaster. Once we define what a polling unit is, and we're able to put in some of the things that make it safe, secure, and reasonably consistent across board, then we can begin to, you know, walk it back. But right now, we cannot even define what a polling unit is.
All right. If every election, you know, there's always a side of the divide that loses and a side of the divide that wins. And there's no election that is not devoid of issues. Obviously, the current president, President Biden, has said that he's going to ensure that the transition is smooth. It means that the Democrats have agreed that, yes, the elections were fair enough for us to concede defeat, and the institution is strong. Absolutely. Now, the last elections that we had, you know, the cases ended up in courts, lots of cases. And it seems like the favorite word is go to courts. If you have an issue with the elections, go to courts. But there's also a transparency and a trust issue with the judiciary. So what do you think we can do to make sure that election issues are fairly judged and resolved?
One, the undue influence of the state actors in the judiciary is a problem. And maybe we should sit down, not for Nigeria, and decide, should the civil society or interest groups, stakeholders be involved in the process of nomination of these judges, and take it out, completely out of the executive. When I say the executive, at the state level, the governors, at the presidency, the president. So by doing that, there will be some sanity, because most of the judges are in most of the governors pocket the judiciary. Not to talk of a former governor who is a minister now. He comes out every day and boasts and tell you that most of the governors is bigger than them. And he has virtually all the judges in his pocket. Presently, his wife is a serving appeal court appeal court judge. So it's potent danger for the democracy. And those are the challenges. Without separating those things, putting round hole and peg in round hole, we will still remain where we are.
Okay, Anike, very quickly, we just witnessed an election in Edo State. Another one is happening on Ondo. And the INEC, they're using these elections to show us that they can be better. So it's almost like this is a preparation leading up to 2027. First, your analysis on the Edo State election, your hopes for the Ondo State election and 2027.
Edo State election was quite interesting in my opinion. You know, if you look at the preconditions for peaceful elections, you could comfortably predict that it was going to be quite problematic. So you have an incumbent that has high stake in who was going to succeed him. And then you have a strong opposition that has some very strong federal influence. And this was a clash of resources. So whether it's financial resources or in terms of raw power resource. And in a mix like that, you know, loyalties are going to be tested, especially from an independent body called INEC. So at the state level, there's pressure. At the federal level, there's pressure. And whoever has enough sophistication to manage that pressure, you know, will begin to deliver. And then there's a third force that had quite a showing in Labour Party in the previous general elections, that people imagined that the momentum from the previous party would have followed through. But results indicated that it didn't even exist as a third force. You know, so you're going to see how do you make empirical sense of things like that. But if I wanted to go in terms of performance of the independent National Electoral Commission, I'll be looking at things around the election materials arrive on time. You know, did election begin on time? Did we have enough security in the polling unit to ensure that people were free to exercise their franchise?
Yeah.
You know, how long did it take after elections for votes to be counted? And, you know, did people seem to agree with the thing overall? And sadly, the answer is a no to that.
All right, the answer is a no. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Thank you so very much, Ifeanyi. Thank you very much, Anike.